Lawyers, have you ever seen someone forge a will, only to learn the original had an even worse fate written for them? I never thought a client's funeral would end in a near fistfight between siblings. But then again, I should have expected nothing less from the Caro family. Eleanor Caro died at 87, matriarch of one of the oldest families in the state, with money going back 5 generations. Her estate, worth roughly $38 million. At the wake, there was more cold silence than mourning, and a lot of fake handshakes. I was her attorney for over 20 years. She was sharp until the very end and private to a fault. She revised her will 6 months before she passed. In my office, handwritten notes in tow and venom in her voice when speaking about the liars and vultures in her family. She made me swear it would be kept off digital records until she was buried. I honored that promise. That decision nearly ruined me. 2 days after the funeral, I received a call from William Caro, Eleanor's oldest son. His voice was chipper, fake even. He asked me to bring the will to the family reading that Thursday, held at the old Caro estate. When I arrived, the mood had changed. William, his younger brother Gregory, and their cousin Ava were already seated in Eleanor's den with a smug-looking man in a beige suit. "This is Harold Dennis," William said. "Our mother's most recent legal advisor. He'll be reading her will." I blinked. "That's not possible." William smiled tightly. "Eleanor replaced you 6 weeks before she died. I'm sorry you weren't informed." It was a lie. Eleanor and I had spoken 3 days before she passed. She confirmed no changes to her will were to be made, and she never mentioned any Harold Dennis. I requested proof of my removal, and they conveniently didn't have it on hand. Just a new will dated a month prior. The reading was grotesque. Everything was left to William. The estate, the accounts, the art, even Eleanor's private journals. Gregory and Ava received $50,000 each. That's barely 1% of the estate. The rest, because William had been the most devoted son. I almost laughed out loud. But I didn't, because I knew it was forged. The signatures were off. The phrasing wasn't Eleanor's. She never called William my devoted son. She once called him a leech in a suit. The tone of the will reeked of desperation. And the notary signature belonged to someone who had been dead for 2 years. I knew then. They faked the will. But the Caros were smarter than they looked. They didn't file the forged will in court immediately. They let Harold Dennis read it in private, hoping the family would accept it without challenge. They underestimated Ava. She approached me privately that night. "That's not her real will," she whispered. "Is it?" I said nothing, just stared. "Because I found something," she continued, "in the attic. And I think Grandma meant for you to have it." What she handed me was a sealed envelope with my name on it in Eleanor's handwriting. Inside, a handwritten letter and a USB drive. The letter was brief and brutal. If this is being read, it means my suspicions were correct. "William is trying to erase me, but I wrote the truth. God help them all when you find it." The USB drive was encrypted, but my office tech got through it within the hour. What we found wasn't just a will, it was a confession. A 30-minute video, dated 6 months before her death, recorded from her study. Eleanor looked frail but determined. She began with, "I know they'll try to destroy this, but I want my legacy clear, and I want them to hear it in my voice." She named names. She told stories of betrayal, abuse, and embezzlement. But the final 5 minutes of the video changed everything. She didn't just cut William out, she damned him. "To my oldest son, William, you've broken my heart. You stole from my charity. You gaslit your own brother. You forged my name on documents I was too old to remember signing. So I'm leaving you what you left me in the final years of my life. Nothing. And the others, I'm sorry for making you suffer in silence." My blood ran cold. It was real. The real will. I had it. But I also knew exactly what William would do if he found out. He would challenge it. He would deny it. He would discredit Eleanor's voice, call it edited. And I had no illusions. He'd come for me too. But I couldn't let it go. Not just because of Eleanor, but because what came after the reading was worse. Ava disappeared. 3 days after giving me the envelope, her phone was off. No one had seen her. Gregory filed a missing persons report. William acted shocked, but I saw the twitch in his eye. I had just uncovered a forged will, but I hadn't yet uncovered what Eleanor's original will had hidden, and it would make William wish he'd never picked up a pen. Ava's sudden disappearance rattled everyone, even William, though I couldn't tell if it was fear or frustration behind that fake concern. The police questioned the family but got nothing useful. Ava had apparently told no one where she was going, not even Gregory. One officer called it voluntary absence. I didn't buy that for a second. Gregory surprisingly reached out to me directly. "I know my brother," he said, eyes dark and heavy with something between dread and guilt. If he knew Ava had something on him, he'd stop at nothing. He paused before continuing, lower now. "When we were kids, he nearly drowned a boy at summer camp for tattling on him. Our father paid to keep it quiet. That set the tone for what I was dealing." Back at my office, I started combing through Eleanor's video. I played it over and over again, looking for something I had missed. And on the third run, I caught it. A detail in the background. On her bookshelf, second row from the bottom, something odd, a small brass key hanging on a red ribbon, pinned behind a photo of her late husband. In the video, she subtly looked at it when mentioning "the rest is secured." It wasn't a throwaway phrase. I returned to the Caro estate under the guise of collecting my records from the study. Gregory helped me stall William, who had returned to the city. Eleanor's private library was untouched. I found the photo, and behind it, just like in the video, the key. I didn't even know what it unlocked until I noticed a seam in the wooden floor under the desk. A nearly invisible panel. The lock was old, rusted, but the key clicked it open. Inside, a steel fireproof lockbox. I took it without hesitation. Inside the lockbox were three things. A notarized version of the true will, dated 6 months prior, complete with legal seal, witness signatures, and a statement from Eleanor verifying her mental clarity. A journal with Eleanor's handwriting spanning the final 2 years of her life. It was unfiltered. She chronicled every argument, every suspected betrayal, every hint that William was manipulating her caretakers. A second USB drive labeled Gregory. That night, I met Gregory in private. He didn't hesitate to take the drive, and when he watched it, he cried. Eleanor's voice again, this time soft. "To my sweet Gregory, you were never weak. You were just decent. And I let William shame you for it. I saw it all, and I am so sorry I didn't protect you sooner." The next morning, Gregory called me. "We need to go public." But we both knew we couldn't. Not yet. Because that same day, Ava's car was found. Parked near a lake. Her purse was inside. Phone too. But no Ava. The detective didn't say it aloud, but I knew he was thinking the same thing I was. If she wasn't in the lake, someone wanted us to think she was. And that someone knew she had passed the letter to me. That night, I received no envelope, no return address, just a message shoved under my door. "You're playing with things that don't belong to you. Walk away, or you'll join her." I didn't call the cops. I called my assistant and told her to clear my calendar. Because I wasn't walking away. I was going to court. I filed the challenge in probate court the next morning. The motion included the notarized copy of Eleanor's original will, sworn affidavit from me confirming her state of mind, a written statement from Gregory, and an encrypted backup of Eleanor's video. I didn't include the lockbox journal or the USB address to Gregory. Not yet. That was our ace in the hole. William was served within hours. I knew the moment he found out. My office cameras caught a man in a black hoodie loitering across the street that evening. 15 minutes later, someone remotely tried to access our office server. Our cybersecurity flagged the intrusion attempt. It failed, but it confirmed my suspicion. William was panicking. The next day, I got a call from Harold Dennis, the so-called new attorney. He sounded nervous. "Look, I think I might have been used." I let him talk. He confessed William had hired him not as legal counsel, but as cover. William had drafted the forged will himself, then paid Harold to sign off on it as though it had been done legally. Dennis was promised a cut of the estate in exchange. But once Ava went missing, Dennis got spooked. I asked him if he'd testify. He hesitated, then said, "If I can get immunity, maybe." I contacted the DA's office and made the deal. I knew it wasn't bulletproof, but if we had Dennis on the stand, it would blow the forgery wide open. But then something strange happened. Gregory's house was broken into. Nothing stolen, just ransacked. His safe, untouched. His documents, still there. His laptop, phone, even cash, untouched. But every single photograph of him and Ava together, gone. Every one. We took it as a message. "We know you're helping her. We know she gave you something." Gregory moved into a secure hotel that night. I increased security at my office and my home. I hired a former federal agent, Jason, to sweep my car for trackers. He found one. Then we received the next twist. Ava wasn't dead. I got an encrypted email from an address I didn't recognize. It contained only a single sentence. "I'm alive, and I'm not done yet." Attached was a short video. Blurry, grainy, clearly filmed in a rush, but it was Ava. Pale, scared, but alive. She held up today's newspaper. She said, "William lied about more than just the will. He's hiding something bigger. I found what Grandma meant for me. And I know now, he was never after the inheritance. He was after what she buried. That sentence changed everything. This wasn't about money. Not really. It was about whatever secret Eleanor took to her grave, and clearly tried to reveal before she died. So we went back to the journal, and on the final pages I found it. A single phrase, underlined twice, written with shaking hands. The ledger. Hidden in the orchard wall. 1958 til 1984. If they find it, it's over. For all of them. I had no idea what it meant yet. But William clearly did, and he was willing to destroy anyone to keep it buried. The Caro orchard was old, overgrown, mostly forgotten. No one had tended it since Eleanor's husband died in the 80s. But the stone wall at the back had stood for nearly a century. If something was hidden in there, it hadn't seen daylight in decades. Gregory and I went out at dawn. No fanfare, no headlights. We parked a mile down the road and hiked through the underbrush. The journal had said, the orchard wall, and she meant that literally. Near the east end, we found a patch where the mortar had eroded more than the rest. One stone looked different, cleaner, less aged. Jason, my security guy, pried it loose carefully with a chisel. Behind it, a hollow compartment. Inside, a flat, wrapped leather ledger, bound with rotting twine. It smelled like mildew and iron. But the contents? Immaculate. Handwritten entries, dated from 1958 to 1980. Each one noted with a date, a dollar amount, and a name. Some were marked donation, others contract, and a few, debt repaid. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. But Gregory's face went pale the further we read. These are payoffs, he muttered, to local officials, to judges, even to cops. He was right. The ledger was a silent history of Eleanor's late husband's financial web, a system of bribery and influence going back over 2 decades. It included names I recognized, judges still sitting on benches, mayors, lawyers, and at the end, William's name. Twice. One entry from 2003, $50,000, hush payment, W. And another, bigger, 2017, $500,000. Next to it, land acquisition fraud. Redirected through non-profit. I understood now. William wasn't just a manipulator. He was part of a criminal operation Eleanor had tried to cut him off from. She had the ledger. She had the proof. And she was using the will to expose it all. That's what he was really after. Not the inheritance. The ledger. And now I had it. We hid the book in a safe deposit box under Gregory's name. We made digital copies. I encrypted 2 and gave one to a contact in the DA's office. The other stayed with me. The next morning, my office was ransacked. They took nothing. But someone had gone through every drawer, every file, and left a dead canary in the mailbox. I reported it, but I knew how this game was played. William wasn't sending messages to intimidate. He was sending warnings. The next hearing date was approaching, and I was ready to submit the original will and bring Harold Dennis in to testify. But when I called Harold's number, it was disconnected. Then I checked the local news. Body found in river identified as local attorney Harold Dennis. Gregory sat across from me, shaking his head. This isn't probate anymore, he said. It's war. But war against what? A narcissist, son? Or a much larger web? The deeper we dug, the more it became clear. Eleanor had spent her final years not just rewriting her will, but preparing a legal trap. And William had walked right into it. Only one problem remained. We had no idea where Ava was hiding, or whether she'd survive long enough to testify. 3 days before the hearing, I received a package with no return address. Inside, a burner phone, already powered on. It began ringing immediately. I answered. Silence. Then a voice. I don't know who's watching, so I'll say this once. I found the addendum. Avenue. She sounded hoarse, paranoid, and exhausted. It wasn't just about the ledger, she continued. Grandma added something to the will, something she never told anyone. It was tucked in the back cover of that journal she gave me. I didn't realize until I read it again. You need to see it. Where are you? I can't say. But I left the page in the chapel, under the 3rd pew from the front. It's sealed in a waterproof pouch. Then she hung up. The Caro family chapel was on private land, rarely used anymore except for family christenings and Easter photos. Gregory and I drove out at night, flashlight in hand. He didn't ask questions. He trusted her. We found the pouch taped beneath the 3rd pew, just like Ava said. Inside, a single handwritten page, yellowed with time, folded twice, dated 3 months before Eleanor's death. It was signed by her and notarized. Clearly real. The contents shook me. It wasn't a codicil in the usual sense. It was a bloodline clause. Should any named beneficiary be found to have knowingly falsified documents, manipulated medical care, or contributed to the harm or disappearance of another heir, their inheritance shall be automatically revoked. That share shall be transferred, immediately and irrevocably, to the next of kin who remains uninvolved. There was more. If at the time of my death such a crime is discovered, I request my attorney to petition the court for criminal investigation and invoke the clause in full. This clause changed everything. If I proved William forged the will and was involved in Ava's disappearance, the entire inheritance wouldn't just revert to the original will. It would legally bypass him forever, even if the will were disputed. It would go directly to Gregory. William hadn't just forged a document. He had triggered a clause that legally excommunicated him from the Caro fortune. And now I knew why Eleanor had gone to such extremes. She didn't want her son punished out of spite. She wanted him erased. That night, Gregory broke. We were sitting in my office, rereading the clause, when he finally said, "He did it, you know, back in 2017. That land deal? It wasn't just fraud. He forged my name on the acquisition documents. He made it look like I bought a conservation plot, sold it to a fake nonprofit he controlled, then funneled the profits into a Cayman account. You knew? I found out too late. He had everything already tied up, and if I'd come forward, it would have buried the family name. So I stayed quiet. But Ava, she always knew. Silence stretched between us. I asked quietly, "And what about the other thing? The hush money from 2003? Gregory's face turned white. That wasn't about me. That was about our cousin Matthew." I frowned. "The one who died in that car accident?" He nodded slowly. It wasn't an accident. For the first time, the legacy of the Caro family came into focus. Not old money, but blood money. Carefully buried for decades. And now all of it was coming back to light, because Eleanor had grown a conscience too late. But better late than never. The probate courtroom was silent when we entered. William was already seated, flanked by two high-priced attorneys from a firm that specialized in estate disputes and crisis containment. His eyes met mine just once, and in that glance I saw it, rage poorly disguised as composure. He knew. He didn't know how much I had, but he knew I had something. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Honorable Marlene Kessler, began the hearing sharply. Petitioner alleges that the submitted will dated January 3rd is fraudulent, that an earlier legitimate will exists. That testimony will show coercion, forgery, and possibly criminal activity. Is that correct, counsel? Yes, Your Honor. William's lawyers tried to object right away. Improper basis, no direct proof, inflammatory language, but Kessler waved them off. "We're here to examine validity, not feelings," she said flatly. Then came the first shock of the day. Harold Dennis's testimony, though delivered from beyond the grave. Before his death, Dennis had emailed me a sworn affidavit. I hadn't told anyone. It was 3 pages long, notarized, time-stamped, and backed up on 3 separate drives. It outlined his role in the forged will, admitted William paid him under the table, and even described a meeting where William said, quote, "Once this is filed, the others won't have the strength to fight, and Ava's too sentimental to push back." I submitted it as evidence. William's lawyers scrambled. They objected, claimed forgery, chain of custody violations, but the affidavit was rock solid. Kessler allowed it provisionally, pending forensic handwriting confirmation. But the damage was done. Gregory was next. And to everyone's surprise, he didn't break. He calmly recounted how Eleanor confided in him, her deteriorating trust in William, the sudden shift in family dynamics, and, most powerfully, Ava's discovery. "I believe my brother is capable of forgery," he said simply. "He has done worse." Then he added, "And if my cousin is dead, it's not just coincidence." Gasps rippled through the gallery. William's attorney stood. "Objection. No foundation for that implication." Gregory leaned forward. "She disappeared after giving our family attorney a letter my grandmother wrote, naming names. I didn't want to believe it, but now," Kessler interrupted. "If Ms. Caro is truly missing, then this court expects law enforcement to act accordingly." They were already trying, but Ava remained hidden. "And William?" He finally snapped. He leaned over and whispered something in his attorney's ear. Whatever it was, it made the man flinch. Then William stood. "Your Honor," he said, voice cold, "this entire hearing is a circus. My mother was senile. The woman recording videos and hiding things in stone walls wasn't of sound mind. She didn't know what year it was by the end." I stood. "I have medical records from 2 weeks before her death. Clean cognition testing, signed by 2 separate specialists. I can submit them now." Kessler nodded. Please do. William sat, teeth clenched. He was losing, and I wasn't even done. I hadn't yet submitted the bloodline clause, nor the ledger, because I needed one final blow. I just didn't know yet that Ava had already delivered it. That afternoon, my assistant burst into my office holding an envelope, hand-delivered by a courier with no return info. Inside, a single flash drive, and a note. Play this in court. If I don't make it, I want them all to hear it. The courtroom was packed when I entered on the second day of the hearing. Word had spread. Reporters hovered just outside the doors, and the Caro name was already trending on local news tickers. But what I carried in my pocket was heavier than any scandal so far. The flash drive. When the judge asked if I had further evidence to submit, I stood. Your Honor, I have a recorded statement from Ava Caro, presumed missing. It was delivered to my office yesterday under sealed conditions. It confirms key elements of this case and includes verifiable timestamps. Kessler narrowed her eyes. Do you believe this evidence to be authentic? I do. And I believe, Miss, Caro's life is in danger precisely because of what's on it. She nodded. Very well. Proceed. I walked to the court projector, inserted the drive, and played the file. Ava appeared on screen. She looked haggard, bags under her eyes, hoodie pulled over her head, breath shallow. But her voice? Steady, controlled. If you're watching this, I'm either gone or I'm still in hiding. Either way, you deserve the truth. She pulled out Eleanor's journal, the original, not the copy, and held it to the camera. This is real. My grandmother gave it to me a month before she died. She said, it's not just a will, it's a reckoning. She flipped to the last pages. This is the clause my cousin and I found, revoking the inheritance from anyone proven to have manipulated or harmed another heir. She held it up for the camera, slow and steady. Clearly legible. William forged the new will. He hired Harold Dennis to backdate it. I heard them arguing about payment the night before the funeral. She took a shaky breath. But it's not just about money. It's about what William did years ago. The car crash that killed Matthew? It wasn't just an accident. Gasps rippled through the courtroom again. William shifted in his seat, face pale. I found the police report Grandma had buried. She paid off the responding officer. Matthew didn't die from the crash. He was alive, injured, unconscious. William left him there. Didn't call 911. Walked away. Grandma found out days later and covered it up. I felt bile rise in my throat. This family is rotten, Ava said. But it ends here. She looked straight at the camera. And if I disappear again, look for the orchard wall. You'll find what you need. The video ended. The courtroom was frozen in silence. Judge Kessler leaned forward, hands clasped. Counsel, do you have corroborating material for this testimony? I nodded. Yes. We recovered the ledger Eleanor Caro referenced. It outlines decades of hush money, bribes, and fraud, including entries involving Mr. William Caro. I placed a scanned copy on the evidence table. I didn't need the original, just enough to verify. William's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is hearsay. We have no proof this video was created voluntarily. It could be a deepfake. Kessler cut him off. The court will order forensic authentication. In the meantime, the testimony stands. Then she turned to William. Mr. Caro, do you wish to make a statement? He didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the screen, not in shock, not in fear, but in calculation. He was already planning the next move. And I realized something chilling in that moment. William didn't care about exposure. He cared about control. And the second he lost that, he'd do something far worse than lie. He'd burn everything down to keep from losing. By the third day of hearings, the courtroom was no longer about wills or family disputes. It felt like a slow-motion train wreck where everyone knew the crash was coming, but couldn't look away. The media had latched onto every sordid detail. Words like embezzlement, fraud, manslaughter, and missing heiress were now in circulation. William stopped showing up. His lawyer claimed medical distress, but we all knew what that meant. He was cornered. Still, the court allowed the hearings to continue, and the longer we went on, the worse it got. I submitted the forensic report confirming Eleanor's voice on the original video was 100% authentic, not manipulated, not synthesized. Her handwritten will and bloodline clause were authenticated by two separate specialists. Even the judge looked visibly disturbed when she read the final line Eleanor had penned. If William outlives me, it will not be for lack of trying on his part. That same morning, Gregory and I were contacted by Ava again, this time through an attorney in another state. She had safely reached a women's shelter under protection after evading two men she claimed followed her across state lines. One had tried to detain her in a parking garage. She fought back with pepper spray and fled. They didn't catch her. Her lawyer confirmed she was willing to testify remotely. It was the break we needed. We arranged a closed-door video deposition. Judge Kessler present via secure conference. Ava testified for 3 hours. Her story was consistent, specific, and damning. She even produced a hidden voice recording from her phone, muffled but clear enough, of William threatening Harold Dennis at a country club. You do your part, or you'll go under with me. No one will miss a parasite like you. The same Harold Dennis who ended up dead days later. The judge's demeanor shifted completely after that. William's lawyers tried desperately to separate him from the will. They claimed he was led astray, had no direct hand in the forgery, and was misinformed about the clause. But no one was buying it anymore, least of all Gregory, and that's when Gregory made the boldest move yet. He stood up and petitioned for criminal referral. That's rare in probate court, but this wasn't a typical case. He submitted a request for the court to send all gathered evidence, will, video, ledger, audio, everything, to the district attorney's office for criminal review. The judge didn't even hesitate. So ordered. At that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about righting a wrong anymore. It was about exposing the darkness that Eleanor had buried beneath old money and stone walls. This wasn't about inheritance. This was about consequence. The next day, police raided one of William's holding properties and found multiple encrypted drives hidden behind a false wall in a wine cellar. Contents: financial records, offshore transfers, signed NDA agreements from former caregivers, some of whom had been paid six-figure sums shortly before Eleanor's mental health evaluations were quietly altered. It was no longer a question of whether William would be arrested. It was a question of how bad the fallout would be, and it came faster than anyone expected. That night, a car registered to William was found burned out on a back road, abandoned. He was gone. No sign of forced entry. No blood. No body. But inside the trunk, police found a briefcase filled with documents and a single handwritten letter. They were never supposed to find it. She said she'd forgive me, but she lied too. We all did. It wasn't signed. But it was enough. The district attorney's office formally opened an investigation the next morning. Gregory was granted temporary control of the estate under the original will. Ava was flown back under armed escort for the final ruling. And the judge, in what I can only describe as a historic statement, declared, "This case is not just an indictment of fraud, but a study in the decay of generational power. The court accepts the original will and clause. The forged will is void, and further criminal charges will proceed independently." But none of us celebrated, because we hadn't seen the last of William Caro, and we knew that a man like him wouldn't vanish unless he planned to return with a vengeance. 2 weeks after the court's ruling, everything should have calmed down. The real will was validated. Gregory, though reluctant, officially took over as executor of Eleanor's estate. He announced plans to break up the family assets, selling off the Caro mansion, liquidating certain holdings, and turning the private chapel into a public memorial garden in Eleanor's name. It was noble, but it didn't sit right with everyone. Some distant Caro cousins began sending veiled threats, angry emails, passive-aggressive legal letters. The old guard wasn't happy the power had shifted to Gregory and Ava, especially since both of them had publicly promised to cooperate with the DA. And then, William came back, not in person, but in paperwork. A law firm in Belize submitted a challenge to the U.S. court on William's behalf, arguing that he was now a citizen of a sovereign nation, that his removal from inheritance violated international property protections, and that he intended to appeal via a foreign tribunal. The whole thing was ridiculous, but also expensive. Gregory's legal fees skyrocketed. Ava had to hire a second security firm, and I began receiving messages from anonymous numbers again. Tell her to stop talking. It's over. Gregory can't save anyone. He's next. The DA reached out and quietly asked for any additional material we hadn't yet submitted. That's when I remembered the one thing I'd held back this whole time. Eleanor's handwritten diary entry dated the night before her final hospitalization. The page was nearly torn out. It read, "If anything happens, don't believe the pills were accidental. Ask Dr. London. Ask about the night nurse, Tessa. Ask why William brought her into the house." I hadn't known who Tessa was until now. With some help from Jason, my investigator, we tracked her down. She was no longer in nursing, now working under a different name in Nevada. We flew her in secretly, and what she told the DA changed the entire direction of the case. Eleanor didn't fall down the stairs. She was sedated. Someone switched her meds. She wasn't supposed to die that night, but when I checked her pulse, I panicked. William had told me just to slow her down, make her more manageable, but I gave her the whole dose. She was crying the entire time. He promised he'd make sure I got out clean. Said he'd destroy the security footage. He did, but I never forgave myself. Tessa agreed to testify in exchange for a plea deal. With her cooperation, the DA's office formally filed second-degree manslaughter charges against William Caro. In absentia, an international warrant was issued, Interpol notified. And suddenly, the headlines exploded again. Caro Air wanted an alleged matriarch homicide. Will forgery only the beginning? The public opinion flipped. What once looked like a sad, dysfunctional estate battle was now a full-blown criminal conspiracy. And amid it all, Gregory made his final move. He stood on the steps of the Caro mansion, reporters gathered around, and read a statement. My grandmother lived in fear, surrounded by the illusion of respect and loyalty. But she died trying to correct that mistake. So today, we announce the creation of the Eleanor Caro Foundation, funded not from the inheritance, but from the liquidation of assets that once protected corruption. It will support whistleblowers, elder abuse investigations, and legal defense for victims silenced by wealth. It was quiet after he finished. Then someone in the crowd applauded. Then more. That night, Ava emailed me a single line. She would have been proud, but I still don't feel safe. I understood. Because somewhere out there, William was watching and waiting, and I knew the next time he acted, it wouldn't be in court. It started with smoke. Gregory was staying in the Caro estate one last week before it went on the market. He insisted on going through Eleanor's things himself, maybe out of guilt, maybe closure. I had advised him not to stay there alone, but he shrugged me off. That night, just before 2 a.m., a fire started in the east wing. It triggered no alarms. Gregory barely got out alive, stumbling through the side door with burns on his arm and smoke in his lungs. The fire department responded within 8 minutes. But by then, the library and Eleanor's study were gone. Ava called me in hysterics. Gregory had been hospitalized. He was stable, but shaken. The official report? Arson. Traces of accelerant were found in 3 rooms. But what chilled me was the method. Precise, strategic. The fire didn't aim to kill. It aimed to erase. All the original files we hadn't yet backed up, gone. The painting Eleanor loved. Her journals. The antique file cabinets with decades of legal records. Burned to ash. But what the arsonist didn't know was that Gregory had, just hours earlier, discovered something Eleanor had hidden in the floorboards. A sealed envelope addressed in her handwriting. Only open if they try to erase me again. Inside was a single letter. Not a legal one, just a letter. But it made everything worse. In it, Eleanor described something I had never heard before: a secret account. A trust established in 1986, during the peak of her husband's dealings. It was hidden offshore, accessible only via biometric match, and a code split into 3 parts. Eleanor claimed she had left Part 1 with Gregory in a safe deposit box. Part 2 had been given to an old friend, her former housekeeper, Maria Juarez. Part 3 was unknown. The account, she claimed, didn't just hold money. It held evidence. I couldn't burn it, Eleanor wrote. Not without implicating others, but I couldn't leave it unguarded. If William ever finds it, it won't be money he wants. It'll be silence. Permanent silence. We now knew why he'd been so desperate. The forged will was never about inheriting millions. It was about seizing control before anyone else found the vault Eleanor had quietly constructed, layer by layer, through fake charities, shell corporations, and hidden files. Gregory handed the letter to the DA. The DA contacted Maria Juarez within hours. She lived in Arizona now, in a retirement home. At first, she denied knowing anything. Then, when shown the letter, she broke down crying. Your grandmother told me, if the house ever burns, tell them where to look. Maria gave the DA an old tin box she'd kept in her freezer for decades. Inside was a scrap of paper with numbers, and a thumbprint ID scanner device no one had touched since the 90s. It was real. We now had 2 out of 3 keys to Eleanor's final weapon. That night, Ava left me another message. He's not done. He was in the country. I saw him. I'm not crazy. He was at the estate, watching. Just watching. I didn't doubt her. Interpol still hadn't found William. The Belize firm stopped returning calls. His accounts were silent. But we knew men like him didn't disappear without a plan. Jason ran surveillance footage around the estate, and what he found made me sick. 2 nights before the fire, a man in a black jacket had been captured by a wildlife camera at the edge of the woods. The resolution was blurry, but the shape, the posture, it was William. He was already back. And this time, he wasn't after signatures or statements. He was after the final piece. Whatever Eleanor buried, she believed it could destroy everything, and William was going to get to it before we did. It took Gregory 2 days to track down the bank Eleanor mentioned in her letter. It wasn't in the US. It wasn't even under her name. It was an institution in Zurich, an old private bank known for secrecy and discretion. The vault required two things: biometric authentication and the full 3-part access code. We had Eleanor's fingerprint on file, courtesy of her medical records. We had the first 2 code fragments, but the third, still missing. We requested secure communication with the bank through a legal liaison. The bank responded curtly. They acknowledged the account existed but would not confirm its contents. Without the third sequence, we cannot proceed. And then we got a call. From a blocked number, Gregory answered, thinking it might be Ava or the DA. But it wasn't. A man's voice, familiar, cold, like wet marble. You found the keys, but I have the lock. Meet me tomorrow. Just you. The call dropped. No location. No time. Just a sense of suffocation. I told Gregory it was a trap, that we should go to the police, that William was cornered and dangerous. But Gregory, calm as ever, said, "That's the point. We're the ones setting the trap." He proposed a plan. We'd bait William with the illusion of desperation, pretend we needed the third code desperately, and would trade whatever he wanted. Money, silence, immunity. All we had to do was draw him out. And Ava, God bless her, after everything, agreed to help. She posted on a private message board the Caro family once used, under a pseudonym she knew William would recognize. A message only he would understand. The vault is incomplete. You were right. Gregory doesn't have the third key. But I know who does. I want to trade. Face to face. Just like we used to. 2 days later, the trap was sprung. William arrived at a private airfield in upstate New York. He wore a gray coat, sunglasses, and a beard. But we knew it was him. Jason and the DA's task force watched from multiple vehicles. We'd coordinated everything. Ava was secured. Gregory was wired. And William walked straight into the meeting spot, a glass-walled greenhouse behind Eleanor's old garden estate. He thought he was in control. He wasn't. Gregory greeted him with calm indifference. "I expected you to run forever," he said. William scoffed. "I did, but then I realized something. You're not a closer, Greg. You're a folder. You fold. You always fold. And now you're fumbling with keys you don't even understand. Then why show up?" William's expression hardened. "Because it's mine. The vault, the contents, all of it. Our family built that empire, and I'm the only one with the spine to protect it." "You mean bury it?" William didn't answer. Instead, he pulled something from his coat, a thin metal plate, an old-fashioned security token etched with the final string of characters. The last sequence. "Let me walk. You get the key. No more leaks. No more trials. You stay quiet, I stay invisible." Gregory nodded and then stepped aside. The task force moved in like a shadow. William didn't even have time to run. He was pinned to the floor, screaming, "You don't know what's in there. It'll burn us all." We did, but we had to see it anyway. Zurich, 1 week later. The 3 codes. Eleanor's biometric fingerprint. Ava's sworn authorization. The vault opened. Inside, not gold, not cash. Evidence. Hard drives. Tapes. Scans. Ledgers. Decades of corruption Eleanor had meticulously documented and stored. Names of judges, CEOs, law enforcement, government officials, payoffs, blackmail schemes, even letters from senators signed and sealed, and in one envelope labeled "In case of final failure," a full confession from Eleanor, addressed to the federal government. She had planned for everything, except surviving long enough to deliver it herself. Gregory turned to me with tears in his eyes. "She wasn't trying to save herself," he whispered. "She was trying to burn the whole rotten house down. And now, it was up to us to decide. Would we bury this truth? Or would we light the match? We thought opening the vault was the end. It wasn't. It was the beginning." Gregory, Ava, and I worked with the DA's task force to catalog Eleanor's archive. It was an astonishing time capsule of corruption. Typewritten confessions, bank statements, mini-tapes with audio recordings and names. So many names. Names that meant something. Names that built careers, won elections, made people disappear. And we knew one thing with absolute certainty. Eleanor hadn't just stored these for her own protection. She had been building a time bomb. Each folder, each envelope was a match. And now we held a box of gasoline. The DA requested a quiet approach. "Let us sort it. Redacteur. Verify." Control the fallout. But Ava shook her head. Control is what got us here. So we made a different choice. We made it public. We worked with a trusted investigative journalist, one of the few whose name wasn't buried in the archive. Together, we digitized the documents, blacked out names only when doing so would protect victims or minors, and launched a secure archive online. Ava wrote the public letter. Gregory signed off on it. I stayed behind the curtain. And just like that, the Caro Vault went live. The internet exploded. Within 72 hours, the archive had over 6 million views. Whistleblowers came forward. Reporters dug deeper. A retired prosecutor in Ohio confessed to burying a murder-for-hire attempt from 1991 because of a donation from one of the names listed. A federal judge stepped down without explanation. A sitting senator called it a smear campaign orchestrated by bitter heirs. And then came the arrests. At first, smaller names, then bigger ones. By week 3, the DOJ confirmed an internal task force was re-examining over 40 closed cases tied to Caro family influence. William, from his cell, filed a handwritten statement calling the vault a fabrication created to distract from estate theft. No one believed him, especially not after Gregory and Ava handed over the full audio file of William threatening Ava, his voice cold and controlled as he said, "No one will believe you. You're not the survivor. You're the loose end." The DA confirmed formal charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, destruction of evidence, obstruction of justice, and attempted manslaughter, linked to both Ava and Tessa's testimonies. William's legal team tried to sever the will case from the vault fallout. They failed. The court ruled the entire sequence of events inseparable, citing a pattern of behavior designed to consolidate control through deceit, coercion, and fear. And Eleanor? Her memory, once tangled in whispers of dementia and scandal, began to shift. People called her paranoid. Now they called her precise. The bloodline clause was upheld. The forged will was permanently stricken from the record. Gregory, now the rightful executor, made a stunning announcement. The Caro estate would be dismantled, piece by piece. Homes donated, art sold for charity. Every dollar that came from corruption would be redirected toward the damage it caused. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. Except, we still hadn't found everything, because one folder in the vault had a different label. No date, no title, just 2 words, written in Eleanor's shaky hand. For William. And inside was something none of us expected. Not evidence, not blackmail, but a letter. A final letter from Eleanor to her son. We didn't know if we had the right to read it. But Ava, eyes wet, said soft, "If we're going to end this, we need to understand why she didn't destroy him when she had the chance." So we opened it, and what was inside changed everything we thought we knew. The envelope was brittle, sealed with red wax. No one had touched it in decades. Inside, 3 pages of dense hand. Eleanor's script was sharp, deliberate, but faltered toward the end, like the words weighed more than her hand could bear. She hadn't written it for court. She hadn't written it for protection. She had written it. Gregory read it aloud in a small room beside the archive. No cameras, no journalists, just us. William, if you are reading this, it means I'm dead, and you lost. And I want you to know something that I could never say out loud. I tried to love you. God help me, I tried, even when you lied, even when you stole, even when you let Matthew die. I told myself, he's brilliant. He's misunderstood. He's surviving in a ruthless world. But it was never the world that made you ruthless, William. It was you. And still, I waited. Waited for a sign that you'd come back from wherever your conscience had vanished. But the truth was always right in front of me. You didn't want to be forgiven. You wanted to be feared. And I gave you that too. For too long, I gave you everything. Until the day I realized you weren't my son anymore. You were my shadow. So I did what mothers aren't supposed to do. I prepared the world to live without you. You always thought you were the smartest man in the room, that no one could outplay you. That control was love and legacy was power. But the true legacy isn't what we build, William. It's what we protect when no one's looking. You protected nothing. You consumed. And in consuming, you ensured your own hunger would be your ruin. So here we are. I've outlived you in the only way that matters. I told the truth. You forged a future that would never belong to you. And I rewrote the ending. Gregory folded the letter in silence. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Then Ava finally whispered she knew he'd try to erase her, but she erased him first. We left the letter where it belonged, in the archive, sealed behind glass, under a plaque that simply read, "In memory of truth that outlived fear." William never spoke publicly again. No interviews. No statement from prison. He faded into the background of legal textbooks and whispered warnings in lecture halls. Gregory continued his work with the foundation. Ava moved into policy advocacy, fighting for reform and elder protection laws. I returned to practice quietly. And every once in a while, someone emails me. Was it all true? That story about the forged will? The missing cousin? The vault? And I never answer, because they're asking the wrong question. It was never about whether the story was true. It was about whether we finally stopped letting people like William write the ending. This time, we did.